Stop right there. Before you watch another second of this video, I need you to understand something. What you're about to hear isn't just another creepypasta story. This is about how a monster was born from nothing, and how that monster reached through your screen and changed the real world forever. 3 people are dead because of what I'm about to tell you. Dozens more have been hospitalized, and somewhere right now, someone is staring at their bedroom wall, convinced they see a tall, impossible figure standing in the shadows, watching them. The question isn't whether you believe in the Slender Man. The question is, what happens when enough people do believe? What happens when fiction becomes so powerful that reality bends around it? Stay with me. This gets darker than you think. Let me take you back to June 10th, 2009. A Wednesday. Unremarkable. Boring, even. On a website called Something Awful, a forum known for dark humor and internet culture, a Photoshop competition was underway. The challenge? Create paranormal images. Hundreds of people were submitting fake ghost photos, doctored UFO pictures, the usual internet nonsense. But then, user Victor Surge, real name Eric Knudsen, posted 2 black and white photographs that would change everything. The images showed children at different locations, a playground, a street, nothing unusual, right? Except in the background of each photo, barely visible, stood something that shouldn't exist. A figure, impossibly tall, 7, maybe 8 feet, thin, wearing a black suit, and where its face should have been, nothing. Just blank, pale skin stretched over an empty canvas. Knudsen added captions. We didn't want to go, we didn't want to kill them, but its persistent silence and outstretched arms horrified and comforted us at the same time. 1983, photographer unknown, presumed dead. Here's what makes this terrifying. Those images were perfect, not obviously fake, not cartoonish. They looked old, authentic, like something you'd find in a dusty evidence box from an unsolved case. The figure was just blurry enough, just far away enough, that your brain had to make sense of it. And when your brain works to complete an image, it becomes yours. It embeds itself in your memory like a real experience. The forum exploded. Within hours, people were commenting, sharing theories, adding to the story. But something else was happening, something unprecedented in internet history. The Slender Man wasn't just being shared, he was being built, collectively, by thousands of people simultaneously. This is where it gets fascinating and disturbing in equal measure. Unlike traditional folklore that evolves over centuries through oral tradition, the Slender Man mythos was being constructed at internet speed. Every hour brought new stories, new sightings, new rules to his existence. Users began discovering old photographs with the Slender Man edited into them. They wrote witness testimonies. They created police reports, medical documents, missing person posters. The level of detail was obsessive. Someone would mention that he caused nosebleeds, and suddenly dozens of stories incorporated that detail. Someone else said he appeared on video cameras as static distortion, and that became canon too. 10 days after those first images appeared, a YouTube series called Marble Hornets launched. It was presented as found footage, raw, unedited recordings from a college film student's abandoned project. The footage showed a tall figure in the woods, standing impossibly still, watching. The camera would glitch, fill with static, and when it cleared, the figure would be closer, or gone, or right behind the cameraman. The brilliance of Marble Hornets was its commitment to the format. These weren't polished horror shorts. They were shaky, poorly lit, confusing, exactly what real found footage would look like. The creators never broke character, never explained it was fiction. They let the ambiguity do the work. And it worked. The view counts skyrocketed. Millions of people were watching, and a disturbing number of them weren't sure if it was real or not. Comment sections filled with arguments, people claiming they'd seen him too, people sharing their own encounters. Here's where my hands start to shake a little, because I remember being 13 years old, watching Marble Hornets alone in my bedroom at 2 a.m., and I remember the absolute conviction I felt that this was real. I remember checking my windows, looking into my closet. The fear was physical, primal, undeniable. That's the power we're dealing with, a collective hallucination spread through screens and stories that feels more real than reality itself. By 2010, the Slender Man had evolved from a forum post into a full-fledged modern myth with consistent characteristics. Physical description: 8 to 12 feet tall, impossibly thin, wearing a black suit with a red or black tie. No face, just blank, pale skin, sometimes depicted with tentacle-like appendages emerging from his back. Abilities: teleportation, mind control, memory manipulation, inducing paranoia and obsession. He appears differently to different people based on their fears. He causes technological interference. Cameras glitch, recordings distort, lights flicker. Behavior patterns: he targets children primarily, but will stalk anyone who becomes aware of him. He appears in wooded areas, watching from a distance. Prolonged exposure drives victims insane. Eventually, they disappear, leaving no trace. The proxy phenomenon, the most disturbing element. The Slender Man supposedly corrupts people, turning them into proxies, agents who do his bidding. These proxies exhibit violent behavior, memory loss, and complete devotion to their faceless master. Multiple web series expanded the lore. Tribe 12, Everyman HYB, Dark Harvest 00, each added layers to the mythology while maintaining enough consistency that it all felt like documentation of the same entity. Academic researchers started taking notice. This was unprecedented, a myth being born and evolving in real time, fully documented. Folklorists studied it, psychologists analyzed it. Everyone wanted to understand how a fictional character could feel so real to so many people. The answer is uncomfortable. Humans are wired for pattern recognition and storytelling. When thousands of people contribute to a single narrative, our brains interpret that consensus as evidence. If everyone's telling the same story, surely there's truth in it, right? Wrong, but our ancient survival instincts don't know that.
May 31st, 2014, Waukesha, Wisconsin. This is where the story stops being about internet culture and becomes about something far darker. This is where people died or came horrifically close. Two 12-year-old girls, I won't name them, they were children, invited their friend to play in the woods. They had been planning this for months. They had studied the Slender Man, read every story, watched every video. They believed with absolute conviction that he was real. More than that, they believed they could become his proxies, that if they proved their devotion through violence, he would accept them, protect them, take them to his mansion in the Nicolet National Forest, where they could live forever. So they brought their friend to a park, and they stabbed her 19 times. The victim, through sheer will and incredible luck, survived. She crawled from the woods to a bike path where a passing cyclist found her. The attackers were arrested. They were calm, matter of fact. They explained that this was necessary, that the Slender Man required it. The media exploded. The Slender Man went from internet obscurity to national headlines overnight. Parents were horrified. Politicians demanded action. Everyone was asking the same question. How could a fictional character inspire real violence? But here's what most people missed in the outcry. This wasn't about the Slender Man at all. This was about two deeply troubled children who found in this modern myth a framework for their existing darkness. Mental health professionals evaluated both girls. They were diagnosed with severe mental illnesses, conditions that existed long before they discovered the Slender Man. The Slender Man didn't create violence. He provided a narrative that made sense to minds already broken. But that distinction gets lost in the horror, and the horror was real. A child nearly died because of a story that started as a Photoshop contest.
The Waukesha case changed everything. Overnight, the Slender Man went from beloved internet horror to cautionary tale. Parents monitored their children's internet usage more carefully. Forums and subreddits dedicated to the mythos added disclaimers. Creators of Slender Man content faced ethical questions. Were they responsible for inspiring violence? Eric Knudsen, the original creator, expressed deep regret. He'd never intended for any of this. It was supposed to be a spooky Photoshop entry, nothing more. Now his creation was associated with attempted murder. But the cultural momentum was unstoppable. In 2015, a video game called Slender, the 8 Pages became a viral phenomenon. The premise was simple. You're alone in a dark forest with only a flashlight. Collect 8 pages while being stalked by the Slender Man. The closer he gets, the more your screen distorts with static. Turn around, and he might be right behind you. The game was crude, made in Unity with basic assets, but it was terrifyingly effective. Let's Players on YouTube screamed and panicked, generating millions of views. clues. The psychological horror was perfect, the growing sense of dread, the inevitability of being caught, the way he just appears, no warning, just suddenly there. Documentaries followed. HBO's Beware the Slender Man in 2016 examined the Waukesha case in depth. Academic papers analyzed the phenomenon. The Slender Man became a case study in digital folklore, internet culture, mental health, media influence, and collective storytelling. In 2018, Sony Pictures released a Slender Man feature film. It was a critical and commercial failure. Fans and critics agreed it missed what made the character terrifying. By trying to explain him, to give him rules and motivations, the film destroyed his power. The Slender Man works because he's unknowable, unexplainable, ambiguous. You can't capture lightning in a bottle. Or, in this case, you can't capture a collaborative internet nightmare in a Hollywood script. Let's address the question everyone's thinking. Is the Slender Man real? No. Definitively, objectively, no. There is zero evidence of a tall, faceless entity stalking forests and abducting children. Every sighting traces back to doctored images or misidentified phenomena. Every story was written as fiction. The original creation is fully documented. We know exactly when, where, and how he was invented. But here's the uncomfortable truth. That doesn't matter. The Slender Man is real in every way that matters psychologically. He exists as a shared cultural touchstone, a modern boogeyman that millions of people recognize instantly. He represents real fears, surveillance, stalking, faceless threats, the violation of safe spaces, the targeting of children. His facelessness is particularly potent. Humans are hardwired to recognize faces. It's one of our most fundamental social skills. When we encounter a human-shaped figure without a face, our brains short-circuit. We experience what's called the uncanny valley, that deeply unsettling feeling when something is almost human, but not quite right. The Slender Man triggers our most primal fears. He's the predator watching from the tree line, the shadow that moves when it shouldn't, the feeling of being followed that you can't quite shake. These are ancient anxieties, hardwired into our survival instincts, given modern form. And here's what keeps me up at night. Belief shapes reality. Not literally. The Slender Man won't manifest because people believe in him. But belief in the Slender Man has caused real actions, real violence, real trauma. In that sense, he's as real as any cultural force can be.
The Waukesha case wasn't the only real-world violence linked to the Slender Man, though it's the most famous. In September 2014, just months after Waukesha, a 14-year-old girl in Port Richey, Florida, attacked her mother with a knife while wearing a white mask and black hood, the typical Slender Man proxy outfit. Her mother survived. The girl claimed she was reading about the Slender Man and wanted to see what it felt like to kill. In 2014, a mother in Hamilton County, Ohio, was charged with attempted murder after allegedly stabbing her daughter and blaming it on the Slender Man. The details were murky, and mental illness played a clear role, but the Slender Man's name was invoked. These weren't copycat crimes in the traditional sense. They were something more disturbing, a shared delusion,
a cultural virus that provided a framework for violent ideation. The Slender Man became a vessel into which troubled minds could pour their darkness. Mental health experts noted a pattern. The individuals involved were almost always young, isolated, and struggling with untreated mental illness. The Slender Man didn't create their problems, but he gave those problems a face, or rather, the absence of one.
Let's zoom out for a moment. The Slender Man is part of a larger pattern of internet-born legends that feel eerily real. Consider the Russian sleep experiment, a fabricated story about Soviet-era gas experiments that drove test subjects insane. Consider the Rake, another faceless humanoid creature. Consider Jeff the Killer, with his carved smile and burned eyelids. Consider the SCP Foundation, an entire collaborative universe of contained supernatural entities. These are all creepypastas, horror stories spread through internet forums, growing and mutating as they're shared. And they all share certain characteristics. Ambiguous reality. They're presented as documentation, not fiction. Found footage, leaked documents, survivor testimonies. Collaborative authorship. No single creator controls the narrative. The crowd shapes the story. Multimedia presence. They exist across platforms, text stories, videos, images, games, artwork. Plausible impossibility. They're supernatural, but grounded enough to feel possible. The Slender Man is the most successful of these digital myths because he hit all these notes perfectly. He's simple enough to be iconic, but complex enough to support endless interpretation. He's terrifying, but fascinating. He's everywhere and nowhere. He's the first true legend of the Internet age.
It's 2026 now. 17 years since those first images appeared on Something Awful. So where does the Slender Man stand in our cultural consciousness? He's entered the permanent folklore catalog. He appears in academic textbooks on digital culture and modern mythology. He's referenced in TV shows, movies, books, and games that have nothing to do with horror. He's become shorthand for internet-born urban legends. The web series that made him famous are still online, still accumulating views. New generations discover marble hornets and experience that same primal fear. The SCP Foundation, inspired partly by Slender Man's collaborative mythology, has grown into one of the Internet's largest creative writing projects. But there's a darkness to this legacy. The Waukesha victim, who survived and has chosen to remain anonymous, lives with physical and psychological scars. The two attackers served time in mental health institutions and were released into monitored settings. The trauma ripples outward through families, communities, the broader culture. We learned hard lessons. Fiction has power. Stories shape how we see the world, especially for young or vulnerable minds. The Internet amplifies everything. A story that might have stayed local now reaches millions instantly. Community creation is powerful, but dangerous. When thousands contribute to a narrative, it gains a pseudo-authority that feels like truth. Mental health matters. The Slender Man didn't create violence, but he provided a framework for existing illness to express itself. We bear responsibility. Creators, platform holders, and consumers all play a role in the stories we tell and spread.
So let me bring this full circle. Is the Slender Man real? I've spent 3,000 words telling you no, showing you exactly how he was created, how he spread, how he evolved from fiction to cultural phenomenon. I've given you facts, dates, sources, but let me tell you what happened to me last week. I was researching this video, deep into the archives of old forum posts and forgotten web series. It was 3 a.m., always 3 a.m., isn't it? I needed air, so I stepped into my backyard. My house backs onto a small patch of woods, nothing unusual. And I saw it, just for a second, a tall shadow between the trees, perfectly still, watching. My rational brain kicked in immediately, probably a tree trunk catching the moonlight strangely, a trick of tired eyes and an overactive imagination primed by hours of horror research. I went back inside, laughed at myself, went to bed, but I checked the lock on my door twice, and I didn't look out the window again. That's the power we're dealing with. The Slender Man doesn't need to be literally real to affect you. The idea of him, the suggestion, the possibility, that's enough. He's a virus of the mind, a thought form sustained by collective belief and individual fear. And maybe that's the most horrifying thing of all. We created a monster, not with magic or science, but with stories and images and imagination. We made him from nothing, and now he's permanent. He's in the cultural DNA. Children who weren't born when he was created know his name, know his shape, know that unsettling feeling when you see a too tall shadow in the wrong place. We made a demon, and we can't unmake him. So the next time you're walking through the woods and you feel that prickling sensation on the back of your neck, that ancient, instinctive certainty that you're being watched, remember, the Slender Man isn't real, but your fear is. And in the end, isn't that the same thing? What's your take? Have you ever encountered something you couldn't explain? Ever felt that presence in the dark that vanishes when you look directly at it? Drop your experiences in the comments. I read every single one. If this video disturbed you in the best way possible, hit that like button and subscribe. We dive deep into internet horror, urban legends, and the stories that keep you up at night. Your support keeps me researching these dark corners of digital culture. And remember, he's always watching. But then again, so are you. Stay safe out there, or don't. Maybe that's more interesting.